So the first thing is all AI consultants are going to make money now, for sure. I think that is not the challenge. The challenge is actually going to be in the implementation. And my sense at the moment is that if the business owner doesn't want to do it, it's very hard to move. If you don't have that buy-in, whatever POC project it doesn't translate into production. At least building the GTM business for AWS on machine learning, I've learned this in the most difficult way possible.
Fractional is for world-class consultants in AI, software engineering, product, and design. In this episode, we talk to Dr. Bernard Leong. He's currently the founder and CEO of Dorje AI, an enterprise AI startup focusing on building the next generation business operating system that enables companies to be productive, efficient, and adaptive. He held regional business roles as the head of artificial intelligence and machine learning in Amazon Web Services for ASEAN, vice president of Airbus Aerial, specifically on satellite and drone services in the Asia Pacific, and senior management roles in Singapore Post as the head of digital services and group chief information and digital office in Wohub. He's also the connector to the Southeast Asia entrepreneurial ecosystem as an entrepreneur in residence at INSEAD Business School. Bernard is the founder and host of the Analyse Asia podcast and is an active angel investor in Web3 and AI startups. He holds a BSc in Science with Merit in National University of Singapore and a PhD in Physics from Cambridge University, and has developed machine learning algorithms to search for mRNA targets in the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute from 2003 to 2005. In this episode, we talk about leading the AI and ML business in AWS, AI go-to-market for AI consultants, creating a financial ERP startup, why change management is critical to land the biggest enterprises, and a lot more. This is your host and co-founder from Swarm, Alexis Collado. Thanks for listening. Bernard, welcome to Fractional.
Hi, Alexis. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and thanks for coming to our dinner last time and bring some of your friends. So, Bernard, can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, I'm Bernard. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dorje AI. What I'm building something that would take us into an ERP-less world, specifically focused on financial applications using AI. So technically, I'm an enterprise AI company.
All right. And before that, I think you were at Amazon and several other companies. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So a little bit about my career history. I started off in academia. I was actually a theoretical physicist by training, doing cosmology and astrophysics. And what people don't really know is why does that have something to do with machine learning. So after my PhD, I went to work for the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute in the UK, which is the home of the Human Genome Project. And at that point in time, they have actually built out their own data of the genome data. And we think about today is like we talk about petabytes. In that period of time, we're talking about 1 terabyte of data.
Wow.
And they need a lot of people to look at that data and try to figure out the patterns inside. So I was using a lot of machine learning, which I've already done in theoretical physics. And basically I brought it over and we developed using unsupervised learning, something called relevance vector machines, which is a more advanced form of support vector machines, to actually do mRNA targeting. So in stem cell regulation. Now, a lot of those technologies that we did were all open source. So essentially, when Moderna came out with taking most of the open source software that was already in the Human Genome Project and they productionized it. And that's why you have the vaccine 20 years earlier.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
And aside from that, you have
then after that, I quit academia, went to startup, did 2 companies. One of them was a high growth, it crashed and burned, raised money with Joey Ito. The other one, which is SG Entrepreneurs, which is a media news site that was essentially sold to Tech in Asia. And we just realized our exit this year when Tech in Asia was sold to Singapore Press Holdings. But a lot of my co-founders have invested in the ecosystem. So we were all angel investors, either in crypto, Web3, or some of the older Web2 companies. People would not know them, but we call ourselves the SG Mafia. Wow. On that. Very cool. So after the high growth startup gone down, I worked for a couple of companies. I think first was Vistaprint, then which is now renamed as Simpress. There is Singapore Post, which I did most of my most interesting work. Probably.
Why is that?
Well, if you are in Singapore and you use something called Pop Station, actually they was the first to use iPhone to unlock the parcel locker. So that was one thing we did. In fact, the iOS version came out the first year, and Apple actually visited us and see how we deploy this technology with the iPhone. And of course, the other thing was the so-called the SAM machine. It's a kiosk machine that actually helps people to pay bills, do remittances, register their government applications. That is actually we redesigned. It's already 4th generations, and I was honored to did the 5th generation, which was the 20-year. So that was designed on an iPad. Yeah. That's and actually one of the things that happened to me at that point in time, I think I can talk about it now, was because of all the work that I did with Apple, and I actually have a very good relationship even till today. Okay, they're always asking me whether I'm deploying anything on with Apple products in the enterprise world. They actually asked me to design an earlier version, an app for SingPost, but for the Apple Watch 8 months before it was released.
Oh, wow.
So over Christmas, my designer and I have to draw all the UI first. And then you'll be given the permission whether to send your engineer there. They will give you the access to the APIs to build the first app. So the plan was, so we did that. We didn't we decided not to work on the app because we thought it was still early. But the interaction with Apple's designers was an amazing experience. I'm a product manager person, but I like to work with designers first.
Yes.
So this is so one of the things. Yeah. Because I always like to think from the UI UX before I try to put in all the engineering. Because I myself is technical. I started in technical. In my first startup, I was a CTO co-founder. Then so in that design thinking phase, it was quite interesting because some of the UI UX, which I thought was intuitive, they give very constructive and very professional feedback. And it wasn't to minimize what you're trying to do, but they really
want you to succeed.
Yeah, they want you to succeed. And that's something I learned working with Apple.
And human interface.
Yeah, human interface design. Oh my gosh. That was such a... Okay, but what people didn't know is the SAM machine actually won 2 global postal product awards. So all the posts in the world will submit technologies they built for this World Poster Award. So usually you win one and you don't win the other. That was the only year we won both.
Wow.
It's like winning the Champions League and the Premier League in the same year. You know, that kind of analogy.
Your legacy.
Yeah, and the concept we had was interesting because we wanted to build 5 million post offices. And the reason why we designed the kiosk using an iPad is essentially the kiosk will disappear and the whole post office experience will be in your iPad at your fingertips. So that was the thinking behind. And I think that kind of product management at that kind of scale, because you're, sending it to all 300 machines across. In fact, we even do like app deployment through the cloud. Those are like in the years of 2014 to 2016 period, right? That particular endeavor took me 4 years to actually do. So I completed the entire digital transformation. I even did the drone flight as well. Then after that, of course, I joined Airbus as the head of drone services and satellite imaging services as well for the whole Asia Pacific. I spent a lot of time in China. Now, then, of course, AWS, where I lead the AI ML business or artificial intelligence and machine learning business. And then after that, about 2 years, 3 months, because due to my dad, unfortunately, he passed away recently. He was having dementia at that point in time. So I left AWS to join Wohub. But I also did some work in enterprise AI for them. And some of the things that they keep cropping up in all the digital transformation projects have led me down to Dorje AI, basically.
Okay.
If you were to ask me what's the common arc was, I was always digitally transforming companies. And it's always a 3-year project where the first year is to build the plan. Second year is to hire the people. Third year is to show whether there are any results. So I'm pretty tired about it, but the problems are the same. It's just how you want to help them to do. And I think the central problem I've seen across is usually to do with finance applications. So
why is that?
So you probably the way I would think about it is this way. So before I talk about Dorje AI, most enterprises, let's say you are above 100 million to a billion or beyond annual run rates, they will tend to use something called the enterprise resource planning software. The most well known is probably SAP and Oracle NetSuite. If you go to every Reddit forum,
Everyone hates it.
Everyone hates it. Quora, everybody hates it. I think there are three parts that they usually hate. One is the UI UX, which you and I who love design, they're great. The interface is still in the 1980s, 1990s. The second is actually, it's very hard to learn, and only the people in finance applications learned. And the third is that the data is all in silos. It's actually, which we will talk a little bit about machine learning later. One of my biggest difficulty when I was leading machine learning in AWS was half the time is actually the data readiness of the organization. Right, is that their data is siloed inside the SAP. It's very easy to put data inside SAP, but it's extremely difficult to pull it out and to run across different data of different functional units to be able to learn insights. And that actually became one of the big linchpins to why a lot of digital transformations don't happen. So part of that is like, if this is really the problem, then the question is, how do we work around that problem? And that was what I decided to do. But I decided to go one segment lower, somewhere between somewhere US 30 to 50 million, where you are a medium-sized business and you're probably using a financial accounting SaaS solution, and you had no choice but to go to the next, which is Oracle NetSuite or maybe even SAP Business One. You'll find that you pay 100x in cost. So what we're really trying to do is we want to get that cost down by half, so that we can serve customers, and we will be using a very different a business model. Is actually people pay by license per user. It's very SaaS-like. But I think because of the evolution of generative AI or enterprise AI, we will look at it. We're going to go with a pay-as-you-go type.
Like a task model.
Yeah, it's a bit like AWS, right? Yeah. You pay you pay for what you use, and you're paying for the work we do for you. I think software is going to become more outcome-driven, and how you'll be able to do work for people is going to change. I think that we can touch later a little bit more about what, because I'm not just want to build a startup that is leveraging on the technology of AI, but also how to build an AI first company. We should be extremely engineering heavy, but light in the sense that the amount of headcount you shouldn't need so much. Because there's going to be the evolution of AI coders like your Cognition, your Magic Dev. I always say that I start my day 4 a.m. in the morning because I spend time talking to my counterparts in the US, trying to really figure out what is going on there and try to be as fast as what the best startups out there are doing in Silicon Valley as such.
All right. So I want to ask you, since you led go-to-market for AWS and the AI organization, right? And you touched a little bit about data readiness, right? Okay. What's preventing these enterprises that you sell to in fully adopting, let's say, an AI capability within their within the enterprise?
So when we say data readiness, right, what we are saying is, okay, you have an enterprise maybe somewhere for $1 billion annual run rate business. What happens is that a lot of them, their data is everywhere, very unstructured, very disorganized. Maybe they just store it on on-premises service, and some of them have moved to the cloud, correct? And then through those data storage, they haven't really organized into different databases, right? You think about, let's say if you have data that has a lot of high transaction throughput, you shouldn't be using an SQL database. You should be using something like a NoSQL type databases, right? So that's the first thing, to structure the data. Now, after you structure the data, you need to ingest that data into something now people call the data lake, and then tries to use something called data warehousing, like a Databricks or Snowflake, to actually organize that data. Let me make a very simple use case that people can relate to, right? Imagine I want the revenue run rate of the business for the last 10 years. Now, if you were to go back all the way to the storage, your server will be constantly hitting to recalculate everything on there. Why do you need to do that so many times where you have already done all the calculation but prepare it in a data warehouse where that where you say I want the annual revenue run rate in the last 10 years, the data warehouse is able to just pull that number and send it to you. We calculated that, and this is also part of the reason why this is crucial to machine learning, because you want your data to be structured and organized, and also you can correlate and build insights. Maybe maybe certain types of operations may be dependent on certain sales process. And the only way you know that is to take the operations and the sales process and put together the different metrics. And then you see, actually, there's a pattern. Whenever we see the operations improve by this, the sales actually improve by this. That's how you gain insight. And I think a lot of business owners, they love the AI. I have this very famous quote was cited is, everyone loves transformation, but they hate to change. Yeah. Right.
I love the idea of transformation.
The idea of transformation is great, but the change is so. In that GTM role, I spent a lot of time with board level conversations, C-suite level conversations, where I have to walk in. It's a 3-hour conversation. Typically, AI will start first because I have to paint the inspiration of what is going to be 3 years' time. And then I have to help them to bring it back to today, where my other colleagues will help me to carry the water and say, okay, this is what we should be doing today. But so essentially, I have to learn their business as well. Say, if you are the largest internet transportation company, you would have to learn everything about their business, how AI can be applied today. If you think about a bank, regional bank, I probably, if I were to be quite honest, I probably have touched every major corporation in Southeast Asia when I was leading the AWS AI business. I almost every 3 hours of my time slot were taken across the week during COVID. But that time was actually spent helping these business owners to make decisions on whether they should spend time in AI. I think now it's very definite. It used to be, it needs a bit of persuasion, but I think thanks to ChatGPT, I think
everyone's convinced.
I pity my colleagues now. They're probably been asked like every other day, you need to meet so and so C-suite. On that.
All right, cool.
So I led the GTM business, and that was one of the type of things about data maturity. If you want my honest assessment, like if you look at McKinsey studies, they talk about maybe 20 to 30% of the companies are really data ready. My sense, okay, just by talking to some of my colleagues who have moved on to other cloud providers, and etc., my sense is around 10%. I think there's a lot of businesses who still haven't have their data really organized. So I think that adoption in the enterprise side is going to take a much, much longer time than what I think the current hype cycle is doing.
Can you paint a clear picture of what the 90% are potentially missing out on?
They are missing out on trying to first get all their data in one place. So that's the first part. Second is that they need to organize that data. And it's only the subject matter experts. If your finance data is not organized in a proper data lake, how is your CFO able to pull the data? So I just give a very basic problem, which actually happens to a lot of CFOs. The CEO wants a breakdown of the budget by departments. And the way how SAP force enterprises is to put it something under cost centers. So simplify it for everyone. Every department has IT budget. You need to buy laptops from each other, right? Now, if you were to think in the department approach, everyone will have an IT number, and then you want to correlate and know who is spending the most on buying laptops, buying these things, right? And then, but finance aggregates it under one cost center called IT and equipment, including your network equipment. And then when it wants that breakdown, and your boss wants that breakdown, the finance person doesn't really go to SAP to do it. You have to go back to the original spreadsheet of the budget, and hence they always takes time. Sometimes the board members usually even when I was talking to board members, they'll ask me, Bernard, why is it so difficult for you, my CFO, to prepare a by department budget and a cost center? It seems very easy for them, but when you ask them for the breakdown, they don't. The reason is because the data is not organized in such a way in the data warehouse that it allows it to split in two different views of that budget. And hence, that's what I meant by data readiness. If you are unable to organize that data in different ways to see it, you won't be able to get the correct insights. I mean, machine learning, what it is you need to have the right data, train the right model, learn the rules, and and then validate, right? And then iterate as you learn. Now, if the common words we know is garbage in, garbage out, right? If your data is bad, then you're in big trouble because what the model is going to come out is really bad. So that inability to actually access data quality, I think is one of the biggest drawback to why a lot of organizations have not actually gone truly into AI yet. They may do a lot of pilots and proof of concepts, but they have not really, they themselves know too, we're not ready yet because they don't have all the data that's organized to do this at scale.
So let's assume you are ready with that data. An organization has a proper data lake. The quality of the data is reasonably high. They've invested some amount of time transforming the company to prepare for AI. Well, what should be on their mind next?
Then the first thing is, what are the use cases they would like to do with AI? So typically it falls into two big buckets. One is cost optimization. That means cost savings. It could be in the form of reducing headcount. It could be also in the form of augmenting the current manpower you have. So I want to be pretty mindful that not everything cost cutting is about cutting people. So it could be just about staying the same, but augmenting people from doing repetitive and manual work or improve productivity. So that's one bucket. The second bucket is increase in revenues. So you could think of situations like, say, if you run an e-commerce site and you run a recommendation engine on top of it. Probably people don't know this, but this is a very well-known fact. 30% of Amazon.com's revenues comes from the recommendation engine.
It's very good.
Right? You buy something. Yes, correct. And then then when I go to a customer and I say, because of that fact, Amazon Personalized is built on Amazon.com's recommendation engine. If we are actually giving you the access to our technology to put on your e-commerce site. Why aren't you not thinking about it?
Sometimes when I talk while I'm on the site, recommendations are like...
Yes, but that's the beauty of it, right? Like for example, that the moment you step into the Netflix, the first 3 clicks you go into planning to watch which show, Netflix have already got a profile of how you're doing. And to be fair, this is actually public studies. Netflix runs on AWS, by the way. And they actually use AWS machine learning services to actually run their own homegrown models. So they don't rely on any of the... so in machine learning, this is the same for every cloud company. They are on 3 levels. The base level is what called AI infrastructure. So you don't just do GPUs, everything is you train your own model, you write your own algorithms, maybe with some frameworks like TensorFlow, Keras, you put inside the GPUs installed, or now Llama, you can just install it by yourself. The second layer is what is called the ML ops layer, where you want to build, train, deploy machine learning models for inference that you run. So I think the most well-known is SageMaker. The equivalent
Amazon
GCP,
SageMaker,
GCP is Vertex AI, and Azure also have Azure AI, and IBM and Oracle also have their own equivalents now. So that's the second layer. Then the top layer is for software developers who have no knowledge of how to train your own models and decide to use the models that's provided by the cloud providers. So like Amazon Personalized, TextRack, which is a AI OCR, or the equivalent Azure Recognizer, or Google's, they have all this vision thing. It's running on their own models. And you're just using an API function. You don't really know what's the training data that they use or the models, but you are taking for granted that their models work. And of course, now with transformers, the large language models, for example, you can actually work with OpenAI, Cloud, or you use Amazon Bedrock to get all the others like Cohere, Mistral, Llama 3. So I think this particular layer is where most people are interfacing on. I also deal with people that all the way down the level. These are the most advanced machine learning practitioners on that. But it's fun because I used to do that ground layer. I had Amazon SageMaker, right?
Yeah.
All the AI process that I deployed to do to run my algorithms would be something like 2 days of work down to 5 minutes. I'm not joking. I actually went and asked myself, if I were to redo everything that I used to do in the Human Genome Project for machine learning, how much time do I need? And then I tried to program it because I was trying to understand how to sell SageMaker. And then I was like, oh, actually I could have done the hyperparameter fine tuning part. Usually take me like almost 2-3 weeks to figure it out. Now it's just like you press the button and it will try to figure out what's the best hyperparameters, right? These are the things that people don't realize how difficult the machine learning is. And of course, with the large language models, it takes it to another scale now, because you don't need to have so much to learn. You just do something like 0, 1-shot or multi-shot learning. You can really get to some insights on that.
And how does your company fit into all of this? Like you left AWS at some point.
Then I went to Warhub, and then I did Dorje AI. So the Dorje AI problem is actually slightly simple. So all medium-sized businesses between 30 to 50 million, what their financial accounting software, maybe Xero, Zoho, QuickBooks, they're going to run into a problem. They can't do a few things. One of the few things is reconciliation of their accounts. The other thing is maybe consolidated reporting with different tax rates and exchange rates, and then maybe vendor forecasting, etc. Those are actually what Oracle has, except that Oracle is an over-engineered solution, and it costs them like 100x.
Yeah, very expensive.
So essentially what Dorje AI wants to do is we will help you to solve those problems, but with a AI-powered ledger. Think about, because the beauty of it is, let me take a very basic concept, reconciliation. Reconciliation is very simple. It's basically you have an invoice which you get from your vendor, you process it, approve, then you pay them, correct? Then essentially what reconciliation is this is the invoice goes into your ledger, and then you have to check against the bank to see if the payment actually match. And this is used for auditing purpose to ensure your accounts is required by the state as such, right? Now, to do actual reconciliation with, let's say, one company, not so bad. If you have 5 companies in 5 different countries, say you have Philippines, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and then you start to have different exchange rates, that becomes a problem. So what you're doing is taking like maybe 58 columns and rows and try to match them together. Now, in the LLM world, the 50 columns and rows actually become one vector. And then the other vector is the vector of the bank statement, of the data that's coming from the bank statement. For those who have done your high school math, you all learn something called dot product, right? 2 vectors, you take one vector, dot the other vector, and if it gets to 0 means there's no deviation. Exactly the same thing here. So essentially, if you can try to move a lot of these financial processes into vector embeddings with the unstructured data, you can essentially create a faster reconciliation engine. We're talking about speeds that are like a lot of even today's ledgers. If you are a high transaction company, say you are payments, e-commerce, or even rewards company, where you have a lot of transactions, what people will actually, most of them will do is they'll put everything in Databricks, and then they post it to the ledger as one entry, and they don't know what is that 50, maybe the 50 transactions that made up this consolidated record. If the ledgers are really working, that shouldn't be happening, right? Part of it is architecture, legacy databases. When you think about the SAP Oracle, okay, I would never underestimate them. They have been very successful. They have 71 and 72% gross profit margin, respectively. They know what they're doing, okay? And what they really very good at is to be able to hold that data, that system of record, the single source of truth. So the question for everyone who's now working in this space, thanks to the YC RFP, is to question. So people thought of different ways of doing. I'm one of those people who actually had probably 2-3 companies that I've seen are taking a very different direction, is to challenge the ledger, is to try to rewrite the entire ledger in modern architecture. And then at the same time, you put agentic AI to do things like financial processes. So think about things like you want to do reconciliation. You should run AI agents to do the checks. You do invoice processing. You want the AI agents to validate and also append additional information that might require. Say, for example, let's say you were selling different SKUs, right? You usually maybe the invoice only come in with aggregated number, and you want to know all the SKUs inside. So you use the spreadsheet that's provided by your vendor, and you take out that SKU information and you append it like an agent. So those things are really dependent, is customized to every business process, which is why it's very difficult to implement SAP for every company. In fact, 50 to 75% of ERP implementations fail. That's not my number, that's Gartner's number. And the reason is because you have to take every business who have all different business process and map it into SAP's framework. Of course, there will be something wrong, right?
Yeah.
You're forcing your business logic to someone's business logic. Now, you have generative AI now. You shouldn't...
It's much more flexible.
Yes, it's so much more flexible. So you could rewrite, if you have a very framework that's very flexible, you could actually rewrite. So the ideal world I would want to be is if somebody gives me their business process in a PowerPoint, Word document, PDF, whichever form, my LLM should be able to construct all their business process into the apps they need to run their financial operations. That should be the world we should be living in. And I think that world...
The ecosystem morphs into...
Yes.
The software ecosystem you architected should morph into their own process.
That's right.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be forcing them to use Dorje.AI's logic.
Yeah.
What Dorje.AI should be doing is you should be able to use the AI to help you to reframe your process into a digital workflow process, at the same time do a better ledger. I think if you can do those two things well, I think that then the market becomes very interesting.
But then for your potential customers, they will probably run into the same issues, right? Or not really?
Not really, but you have to dive a little bit deeper. So
I mean, with the data infrastructure,
yeah, with data
related stuff.
infrastructure, etc., etc. So one of the things that Dorje does very differently is a lot of SaaS services requires your customer to live in your cloud. One of the things we are trying to do is not to do that. It's actually we are deploying in their cloud. So we have to work with our technology teams because we think that they should have their security, they should have their login single sign-on, and what Dorje.AI is doing is orchestrating the data, whatever they already have, and helping them to put their financial application piece safely inside their environment. So I know it's very counterintuitive, but I think that the SaaS model is going to get an upheaval in the next couple of years. Because I think that we are going from what I call a SaaS model, eat all you can for per user, to eat all you can for work. So you should be giving everybody many users instead of having that and charge them for the work you have done rather than charging per user. And the charging per user is actually very expensive.
And a lot of people are getting irritated by that business model already.
Correct. Yeah. The average cost for SaaS in the US is about $300. I want to be charitable. Europe is about somewhere 100, 150. Developed countries in Asia, I would name only cities. The top tier cities in every country is probably 80 to 100 USD. And you'll be shocked. Indonesia, $5.
Wow.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend that.
No, yeah. So that tells you a lot, right? And we're still fighting. People in Southeast Asia talk about SaaS models, right? I'm like, your VC say, we need to back SaaS model. I think sometimes they are also smoking crack as well, because how could SaaS in Philippines and Indonesia is $5? It means that $5 just tells me that they would rather hire cheap labor to do the same work than using SaaS to automate the service. So that's also one of the things that I think the beauty of generative AI also allows me to change the business model. Yeah. Something that would make much more sense than everyone else.
What are you most excited about, right? You talked about being able to call your counterparts in the US every 5 a.m. every day. Like, what are you most excited about now when it comes to AI?
Two things, right? GTM and product. I think for startup CEOs, if I were to be, you're a product manager as a startup CEO. Before you evolve to a Series A, B company, then that role changes. I was making this comment to the different investors and whatever. Usually, most of the successful companies, from Canva, Figma, they actually took 4 years before they find PMF and they became billion-dollar companies. In fact, people have done a study. Actually, you need 4 years, right? The next 4 years will be the most exciting time for me because that's the time where I can actually design the product. The joy. You and I probably we like design, right? We want to put the design in. How do you have a Apple-like experience in an enterprise application. Everybody always say enterprise application UI sucks. Is there a way to actually beat that, right?
Introduce the light.
Yeah, introduce
into
the lightness.
experience,
How do you take away all the repetitive process in the enterprise solution? Actually, 90% of them is just checking validation. I will tell you, like in the construction company I worked before, my current startup, one of the things they did is data entry. And the data entry is actually time wasting because they have to check manually. So one of the things we did is we used the AI OCR to pull out all the information. They just need to check once. And then after that, they push it across. Compared to SharePoint, put the document in the SharePoint, take out from the SharePoint, type it in, human error one, pass it to another SharePoint, do the same thing, human error two, and then patch to the other way. But you do it once, and then you validate once.
Yeah.
That is 80% productivity.
AI and then human intervention.
Yeah. That takes out, probably we took something that was, by the time I used it, it was a hockey stick group.
Wow.
In the company. It's like, I hardly know, right?
I love that you're just saying it casually.
Yeah. It was like, because it was quite funny because originally we wrote one process and then we ended up doing the entire process because everybody loved the app, and then essentially even kill off a vendor which we want to integrate with.
I mean, that's how people should think about it, right? Like, find a use case, a small success story, and then expand to adjacent processes or the entire thing.
Correct. It also helped me understand how the ERPs work in the process, right? I was like, actually, as long as I don't need to push anything to the ledger, I could have a separate data that can actually construct what the ledger is constructing. And that was also part of the insight that I got after working through so many ERP implementations myself, which was very annoying and very time consuming.
Why is it annoying?
Because first, okay, if you want to implement a specific thing like inventory management or any warehouse management, you have to get the SAP external consultant to write a blueprint, map your logic to SAP logic.
Yeah.
Usually they tell you 3 months. And actually ends up 6 months because the stakeholders never have time to meet up with the SAP consultant to do the interviews. Then after that, the deployment is like waterfall. No one knows. You have to trust them for the next 6 months. They have to do it by themselves. They can't even iterate the product like the way how we do it in HR, right? So that then worse, when it comes up, is like, this is unusable. So any project from that was 9 months became 1.5 years. Now, contrast with the app that I built for them, which was the AI OCR. Oh, this is what also gave me some ideas on how to build an AI first company. We got 12 engineers in Vietnam, first year graduates. So my head of engineering was first based in Singapore. He moved back to Vietnam. He's Vietnamese, so he can speak Vietnamese locally. And the first thing we did was, let's try giving 50% of them co-pilots. This is pre-ChatGPT era. So we found that actually those with Copilot, the 6 of them with Copilots, actually got a 50% improvement in productivity. We scoped the projects for 15 months. Then once we know one works, we throw everyone Copilots. And we found that actually we brought down from 15 months down to 9 months. This is without GPT. When I left, I tried to reconstruct the same app that we said 15 to 9 months, right? I said, can I build out the same thing, just do a prototype? So what I did was, after I left, I based on my memory of how the app it was, and I actually reconstructed the app using ChatGPT. So doing different parts of the modules. And then I think that was before the context window was allowed. I couldn't get everything to work together. Then once the OpenAI developer event did, where they opened the context window up to 128K. I just took all the code and put it together and say, can you refactor this code and make it work? And it worked.
Wow.
And then I sent a private message to my head of engineering and said, it took me 3 weeks to replicate your app.
It's amazing.
So what I'm saying here is this whole engineering productivity piece is going to change when you build an AI first company. What it means to me is this. We will still need human beings. I have no doubt that AI coding is going to replace a human coder. But what happens to the human coder is he will be able to code up the parts that he is very good at. You know, some people are good back end, some people are good front end, right? They could say, all the back end, let me outsource to an AI coder. let them do that part of the work. Or maybe he's the back end guy. It's like, can you help me to use Vercel V0 to design the interface?
Use this design system.
Yes, correct. And then you design, okay, good enough for me. And then you can put it all together into one piece. So engineering resources are going to become more and more variable and less fixed. And actually the largest call center for every tech company is engineering, software engineering. I think it will still be the same, except that proportion of funds is going to be cut down by at least half. Because of that's what I meant by AI first company.
Gains. Yeah.
Productivity gains is so great, right? The other part of AI first company is I actually don't need lawyers these days. Just for everybody, cap table calculations for your startup used to take me 2 days to do the Excel spreadsheet, put everything together, make sure the numbers are correct on that. With ChatGPT, I did it in 26 minutes with one prompt, right? And then plus I want to do all the scenarios of it, and it just did it for me within another 10 minutes to get everything done. Then when I want to read contract, I ask ChatGPT, compare this contract versus the YC safe note. Can you tell me what are the problems? And then I went back to the people with all the clauses, and then they were like, okay. But then they went to their lawyer. The lawyer said, actually, I only need one clause. We'll solve all the other clauses you added. And I put that clause and I remove everything. And I said, I asked ChatGPT, can you look at the contract and see whether it really solves that thing? And it actually checks and it says yes. So using it so when you think about AI first, you're thinking about how to even augment every function you have. There is actually a very good Accenture report that talks about, I think for every function from HR, finance, operations, productivity savings with giving them just ChatGPT for enterprise is actually 20 to 40% improvement gains. And a lot of startups are doing that. I would quote my friend Joanna from Nansen AI. She actually perfected it for HR. Because, of course, we know recently a lot of startups have to do layoffs. So she's reduced. So she used custom GPT and built out an app that helps her to actually reduce a lot of the repetitive work that they are doing. And I think this is going to be happening.
Like adding job descriptions, moving people across buckets in the hiring pipeline.
Correct. So you could see this AI first. I think a lot of AI startups are not taking advantage of the AI first mentality.
Why not? Why is that?
Because I think they are still of the mindset that, hey, I need to build up 8 people team. This 8 people team must do all these different things. But some of those things are actually redundant, and the GPT can become a use for it. I actually use a lot of things in ChatGPT to help me to do things like administrative work. And now I'm starting to integrate them into Slack and say, hey, can I get an approval process that can run through Slack? It's just approve or not. Give me a red flag. Things that used to take people time, that requires validation and verification. Of course, this is for the agentic workflow of what Andrew Ng talks about. It's a reflection design pattern where it uses an AI to check. I think that design pattern is working.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you've seen the videos I create, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have my own philosophy around how the storytelling should go. And I asked ChatGPT, like, what do you think? Like, roast it. Like, having it as a professional, not just professional, like probably class number 1 at something aid all the time, 24/7, such a big superpower.
Yeah. And if you ask me, like, there are things like we used to do even in AWS, like doing GTM, for example, that whole workflows that I have to do things that do not scale, and then eventually automating myself out of it. I think now with ChatGPT or any LLM, I can actually automate it relatively quickly once I do finish all the things that do not scale, get the experiments done, and then move, and then just using the LLM to automate some of that through agentic workflows. So I think that there is a shift happening. I think people have to be patient, including myself. Even when I think about AI startup, I think very clearly before I even hire. So I kept my burn rate extremely low because I'm trying to do certain things using ChatGPT as part of that suite so that I don't need to hire so many people. And I think this is something that a lot of companies are not thinking about. I talk to a lot of startups, founders, I kind of see some of their challenges, etc. I think this is something that it should be happening more often. And I know my dream is cloud first, remote first, and AI first.
And family first, like
Ah,
your
family,
life first,
yes,
right? Like
yeah.
being able to actually enjoy your life.
Yeah.
Like that's the reason why we have all of these. Like,
Which
automations and
happens
stuff,
for
yeah.
a lot of software usually when it breaks down, right? Like you saw the recent CloudStrike thing that
Oh,
happened,
yeah.
right? So one dream that I do have is that I hope that the AI could actually preempt the problems of the ERP system. That it becomes more preventive. There were two things I really aspire. One dream I have is that a lot of ERP change management for Chief Digital Officer CIO is there is currently Python is the best language. Maybe in a few years there's a new language called Snake, imaginary language, right? And people rewrite the whole architecture in the new language. And typically the change management will take another 5 to 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But with AI today, you can actually do reinforcement learning to get the AI to learn the rules of the new language and rewrite
The entire
thing in the new
ecosystem,
language,
yeah.
right? Then does it mean that the ERP in the future should be a one-click transfer, right? You do the entire thing in the new platform. You run all the beta tests of everything that you do. It's still working. And then you just press one click and then the language, it looks exactly the same interface to you, but it has already moved on to a better infrastructure, better design. You know, that I think is the holy grail of all software migration.
Transformations
Yes.
don't need 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
all the time.
Correct. And to be quite honest, you probably would, really, I think I told you this that we're having dinner. Dorje means powerful transformation and indestructible in Buddhism. That's the name. That was what I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want to do. Business operating system that can do powerful transformation and also be indestructible.
But it seems like you're going to be focusing on the finance parts of where Gen AI can work with first, right? Do you have any plans on scoping out other areas?
Yeah. What I think now is that we live in an ecosystem where we should be able to have partners. There are other very good software companies that are building things like inventory management system, warehouse management system, e-commerce, fulfillment systems, all that. We don't have to build everything.
Yeah.
But we just want to make sure that we can be integrated with everything. And this is
Interoperability is like first principles
That's
thing
right.
for you.
So I think there is beauty in making it open. I think the problem with SAP today, if you look at all the multinationals, they are pretty beholden to SAP. If a transfer for them from SAP out costs them not just millions, it's billions of dollars. Yeah. Just there is a very good book, 7 Powers of Hamilton Helmers, SAP's superpower switching costs. HP pays $105 million in 2005. And by the time they reach in 2015, they are paying an annual tax of 5% CAGR to SAP. So you can calculate it's almost $200 million to SAP, right? So essentially, why are you taking so much technical debt on there? Where the system, right? So this is what has changed. And probably there will be many people like me. There are probably another 1,000 startups that will be trying to figure out the same thing as I figure out.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that intense, saturated competition?
I think competition is good. I think competition helps you to be better. One of the big things about startup failure is execution risk. So if I lose, it's probably my execution risk is worse than the person who will eventually win that game, or the team that eventually going to win that game. So that's always on my mind. And people work with me, it's like, Bernard is always like, we are not fast enough. You know, founders have this founder mode, they call it now, right? Yeah, you need to be fast. You want the solution to be ready yesterday. Also because when I talk to some of my customers who already moved on to the other ERPs, it's actually going to be very hard to change them. And they actually want a solution that's cheaper, but they want it yesterday and everything inside, which I can't provide today. I think all founders have this. This is probably the best book I've read, and I would recommend it. It's called A Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell. And he's in the book is actually talk about why political, economics, even science, they have different ideologies. Like, you know, for example, there's Keynesian versus neoclassical in economics, right? If you start examining all these different areas of knowledge, you find that the assumptions and the initial intention is actually good, but it deviates. So the deviation is because there's constrained and unconstrained. So like a communist world is actually an unconstrained version of utopia, whereas constrained version is capitalism and democracy, for example. Just use that as a... So founders have to balance two things. There is the unconstrained version. The unconstrained version is the world that I will tell you, the ideal, the way you could do change management of your ERP system with a one click, right? You'll be able to map everything to your business processes. Everything should be easy, agentic AI running everything, right? That's the unconstrained version. Then there is the constrained version, which is today. How much can you build and how much resources you have? And we don't have a lot of resources, so we have to learn to be efficient. So if you think about this constrained and unconstrained, well, most founders would have this challenge of how to think about resource allocation. And I think it's the same with building any startup. Founders will have to always struggle between these two worlds, the constrained and unconstrained world. And the best founders are the ones who could figure out, like I think someone like Elon Musk, Sam Altman, where they know for example, the unconstrained world for Sam Altman is build AGI. The constrained world is today with OpenAI, this is the $1 billion I have. What are the things I want to build? Reasoning. I want to build, things that can actually serve the enterprise with the ChatGPT plus, the different variation of the products. You think about Elon. Unconstrained is Mars. So to solve the tunneling problem in Mars, I built Boring Company. To solve the logistics today, I built SpaceX, right? So, despite whatever we say, those are the constraints.
Despite X.
Yeah, despite X. But you think about that, right? It's the constrained and unconstrained views of it. I think I take a much more humble approach. I would probably say, even before starting this, I took the only history book in SAP in the market in Amazon. I actually bought that book and I read through how the founders started. And I actually pick up some things from that book and say, if I were them today, how would I have done it? The spirit is the same, but the methods may change.
Yeah.
So if you probably have to understand, these companies SAP, Oracle, they became very, very big companies, but they were once startups too. The fact that you think that they are dinosaurs, I think you're totally wrong. You should never underestimate how good these companies are. You should actually overestimate and ask yourself, how far do you have to be in order to reach their status?
I love how you were talking about examining the intentionality, the first principle intentionality of the founders when they were first starting out, because you can gather the good intentions and apply it here with the new sophisticated tools and methods that we have and help shape how we're moving forward with that.
Yeah, you'll be surprised that the SAP founders' original plan was actually to build good accounting software for businesses to help them to manage finances with a mainframe. That was as simple as it was, right? Eventually it became SAP, but the intentionality is very important on that, and you're right about that. I think if you do not have the intentionality, whatever you want to build, it doesn't matter.
One last topic I want to touch on before we end is examining how prepared we are as Southeast Asia in the global AI arms race. What's your take on that?
So if you ask me today, there is, of course, in the US and China, probably the top two. US will be first, and China is still in the catching up phase because they have their own foundation models. They are building their own frameworks to access the large language model, like the equivalence of LangChain or Llama Index. And then after that is the application layer. So I think China and US are extremely strong on there. Then if I were to look at who comes after that, would be Europe, Mistral in Europe, Cohere in Canada. And Singapore has Sea Lion as well. And some of the countries who have Japan, Korea, they're building their own. I think Japan has Sakana. They have the local large language models. So I think that's the global landscape. Where I see most businesses are going to be playing, the new generation startups are going to be playing, are in the application space. The foundation models is going to be between the cloud providers and the big three, the Anthropics, the OpenAIs, maybe even Hugging Face because they source all or even Meta, right? Which Llama, for example. So the question then is, where's the value? currently the value is all sitting in the NVIDIA chip. If you ask me today, what's really making money for AI, I would say it's the NVIDIA chip, it's the networks that you build in the data center that runs the inference engine, and it's the cloud provider where you have the data storage, everything on there. As to how AI able to make that value, there's a very good article by Sequoia called the $6 billion hole, AI 6 billion hole, 600 billion hole, sorry. If you read the article carefully, what they are saying is that based on all the investments that you put in, it's already a 600 billion hole. That means all the AI applications must make $1 trillion worth of revenues to justify their existence. And we're not there yet.
Very, very, very,
very,
far,
very early.
Very far.
Yeah. But we may be seeing this is the first wave, and there may be like all hype cycles, you will have the inflated expectations. Today is the inflated expectations. When did the trough of the illusionment starts? That means when the thing goes down, right? It's probably come at some point. What is going to trigger it, I don't know. Any startup founder should be thinking about how to survive, whether you're in Southeast Asia, etc. But I suspect that the real differentiation, if you are AI startup in Southeast Asia, your localization strategies has to be very clear, or your data strategy has to be very clear. For example, let's say if I work on an enterprise AI company in maritime shipping, and I should be having freight data, I should be having logistics data because I work in Singapore Post. We also revolutionized our own logistics system, right? You should be able to know how many warehouses are available, all that. That domain specialization is going to be there. So I think those kind of companies will actually thrive. Or something like, for example, if you want to build something that can run in Tagalog, because LLMs can translate across now. So in Philippines. So that language capability, which actually AWS had a lot of problems selling their language solutions in this part of the world 2 years ago, is now gone. So your customer service things is going to change, and your BPOs are going to be under stress. So the question is, how would they able to change in this world? I like one of the business owner, the CEO of one of the big BPO companies in Philippines. I can't name that company, but he was one of the most, his idea of moving the BPO was, I want it to just augment my customer service officer. In fact, what I think AI should do is take away all the entry point problems, but my BPO is going to solve the more complex problems. And I think that he's in the right track to think about that augmentation.
Get people from doing menial tasks to being problem solvers.
Correct.
And like people who design the process instead.
And he's really focusing the strength of the customer service, the human customer service agents of dealing with complexity of the problem, rather than trying to take away people, but he was trying to how to augment the people. And I think that one of the big 5 BPOs, I think he's in the right track.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. We have a lot of catching up to do, for sure. But my last question for you, Bernard, is what's your advice to all of the people who want to break into that enterprise jungle? And it's a 2-layered question. And, you know, all the consultants who also want to break into this space and offer something valuable.
So the first thing is all AI consultants are going to make money now, for sure. Sometimes I get a lot of consulting gigs for this, but I actually spend most of my time helping them to bridge with other consultants that I know in the market. I think that is not the challenge. The challenge is actually going to be in the implementation. It requires a lot of stakeholder engagement. And my sense at the moment is that if the business owner doesn't want to do it, it's very hard to move. So if my advice to everyone is, if you want to get a company enterprise to implement AI as a solution, your first priority is to get the decision maker to say, this is something I would like to do. And the reason why I'm doing it is because it will improve my bottom line or top line, depending on how they're thinking about it. And we know this is the right direction to go. Because if you don't have that buy-in, whatever POC project it doesn't translate into production. At least building the GTM business for AWS on machine learning, I've learned this in the most difficult way possible. And
How so?
Yeah. How so?
In ways that doesn't get you
if I were
canceled.
to tell you, business development in AWS is different from the rest of the world. Business development in traditional companies just strategic partnerships, strategic alliance, corp dev, etc. Whereas in AWS, if you are in business development, it's actually a GTM role. It's a GTM and a growth hacker role. Your job is to figure out the initiatives that will grow the business from 6 months to 3 years. And it's extremely difficult to do it because you need to know what your customers want and who are the buyers. How do you make sure that they happen? Taking one business, like for example, I think we spoke about it, like the personalized recommendation engine from 0 to a 1 million ARR business in 9 months. If not, I get fired. No,
like the point one conversation.
Yeah.
But generated a ton of money.
Yeah, generated a ton of money with real cash value, right? You have to really dive. You do the things that do not scale. You talk to that first 50 customers. You go in all the way with the POC to production phase with a tech person, and we have to create an automation workflow. Select 50 customers, go through them with the first call deck. You iterate all the questions they ask. You try to prepare better and better, and then you qualify the customers. And then after that, you do the technical POC and then get them to production. In that whole process, we squash it down. And one of the things that actually aided me was COVID. Because it used to be I need the technical people to train them, and that usually takes up a few months of organizing. Now it's just like we're all COVID, everybody come into the Zoom call and we'll train everybody on spot, right? Which actually helps a lot, actually, coming to think about it. But essentially, one of the things about being a GTM in AWS, this is not how we know whether you're successful, is that you automate yourself away. So while I was building all these qualifying, I started creating forms and gateway in each step. I started to automate myself out of the job. So if you're successful in GTM, what happens is that if any account manager has an AI problem and wants to use this, they must first fill out the first form and you check whether it's the correct customer. Then they use whatever you have that you develop, the sales call, everything, you train them. I train the sales teams every quarter for all the different segments. And then if they have problems a little bit higher level, they call me. Then I'll go in, or sometimes technical, I'll call my tech
level
team.
200 to
Yeah, level 200. We got 100 to 400, right? The level 100 to level 4. Level 100 is basic business conversations. Level 200 is something like business plus low code, no code. Level 300, 400, technical conversations.
Solutions architects.
Yeah, if you want to get to research level and may require AWS Chamber, there's a level 500 conversation. It happens before, even in Southeast Asia. Okay, but essentially, as I build out the sales motion, I build out the tools that help to automate me away. And essentially, a program person will take over my sales process. And that whole process of the programs do things that do not scale.
Yeah.
To be successful in Amazon, you have to do it all the time. So even though I finish for one service, I have to start to build for the next service, not just for personalized, fraud detector, forecast. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't feel. Then there is a separate motion running for ML ops. Only certain business can do ML ops. So your understanding of running that whole sales motion actually gives me a lot of training. Now, like when I see...
Now you have your own thing.
Now I have my own thing, right? I ran it exactly the same way. So I'm trying to first now go through, but it requires a little bit more effort because there's implementation involved. So I have to spend a lot more time. But I find that the principle of deep diving is very important. And one of the things that we do in that process, right, is actually iterate on the product. And we can actually talk to our product teams. And I also learn experiences from my counterparts in other regions. And sometimes they took some of my ideas and put it inside theirs. And sometimes I took their ideas and put it inside mine.
That's good.
And you find that you actually learn quite a lot on there. So GTM is probably one of the biggest challenges for all the AI builders in the market. When I tell VCs there are genuinely only 8 to 10 people who knows how to do this, I am definitely sure, because I've been telling to some of the startups I advise, I train some of you from what I do. So it's not it's not that easy. Yeah, on that.
It probably will take a year or two to...
Yeah, in Amazon, 2 years, according to them, is you have worked in a company for 4 years. It's very amazing that of all the companies I work for, Amazon's the only company that when I meet all my ex-colleagues, it's all about war stories. And there are so many of them that some of them I don't even remember. And they were like, oh, you forgot we actually went and did this with this customer and you went and do this and this is great. The kind of thing. Oh yeah, now you reminded me. It's like that everything is a war story. So it's like, and of course, SingPost is the other one that had a lot of war stories that I actually enjoy. But I think that's the whole part of the GTM that is going to be difficult.
All right. So to all the consultants out there, think about your sales GTM. Make sure you take change management seriously, because if not, you're going to fail. You're doomed to fail, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about the tech.
Yeah.
The first layer is convincing people.
And human beings as well.
Yeah. All right. And that's it for our session. Thank you so much, Bernard.
Thank you, Alexis, for getting me here. And maybe we should reverse sometime and come to Analyse Asia podcast. Or maybe get Dexter as well.
Yeah. We'll do that and,
Okay.
and trade some insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.